Today, we're taking a European journey to the Greek islands.
Welcome to Vacation Mavens, a family travel podcast with ideas for your next vacation and tips to get you out the door. Here are your hosts, Kim from Stuffed Suitcase and Tamara from We Three Travel.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Atlas Ocean Voyages. If you've ever dreamed of cruising to Greece or Egypt, now is the time to book. Atlas Ocean Voyages just introduced its new expedition ship, the World Navigator. This small ship luxury vessel is built for adventure in a sustainable but energy-efficient manner. It's perfect for adventurous families or multi-generational groups. Its compact size and small guest count of fewer than 200 passengers means a higher space to guest ratio and more intimacy and personalized service. From August through September 2021, World Navigator will sail 7 separate 12-night itineraries to Greece and Egypt, and its small size and agility means she can dock in smaller ports, avoiding large crowds and getting a more authentic experience. And this summer, arrivals in Greece do not coincide with any other cruise ships in port. Bookings are all-inclusive, including both airfare and excursions. The ship's facilities and protocols reflect state-of-the-art public health guidance, with stringent public health protocols followed by staff and crew, with pre-boarding and pre-embarkation PCR testing provided for all passengers. Social distancing will be maintained with small group shore excursions. Atlas welcomes travelers to come back to something brand new. To learn more, please visit www.atlasoceanvoyages.com, and we thank them for their support. Kim, I have to say, after just coming back from Greece, now is such a good time to go that if people could still book a cruise for later this summer or the fall, it would really be a great time to go.
I can see that. I was following along on your stories. I think a lot of people are just unsure about all the I guess in some ways you'd say loopholes and things you have to think about when you're traveling. And so it might be the perfect time for summer in Europe.
Yeah, it's definitely, not as crowded, and people are very eager to welcome you back. And, luckily, especially with Greece, the emphasis that they've put on vaccinating people in hospitality and on the islands, and plus the fact that everything is outside, it makes you feel, so much more comfortable. So definitely a good time to go. But otherwise, if you can't go this year, and you've dreamed about a cruise either to Egypt or the Greek islands, then, check out Atlas Ocean Voyages. Small ship luxury cruising sounds like a great way to go because it includes all your excursions and everything else. At least you know exactly what it's going to cost you.
Yeah, and as we've already said, the small ships are really the way to get a more intimate experience with the destination, so you're not being dropped off on huge piers.
Yeah, exactly. When we took our ferry back, I saw maybe 1 or 2 cruise ships at a couple of the islands that we stopped at on the ferry back to Athens, but those were mostly like small ships as well. So yeah, cruising is coming back. We saw on our flight back to JFK, like one whole section in the back seemed to all have those little celebrity bags.
Oh, yeah.
They give you on a cruise.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's exciting. And I think it's great if people want to look at kind of that new journey. And like you said, there's still a whole month of August left for the summer. So if you've got some free time to make impromptu vacation plans, then the Atlas Ocean Voyages might have a good deal for you to jump on.
Yep. And if you want to explore Greece by land, or at least to the islands, then I can give you some tips because that's what we're going to be talking about this episode.
I cannot wait to hear about your trip. It seems like you guys really enjoyed your time together. And, for an anniversary trip, it seems like it just checked all the boxes for you guys. So I'm looking forward to sharing with our listeners everything that you guys did and what you learned. And we should just get right into it.
Yeah, definitely. It was one of those trips where I was prepping myself as we were driving down because we had to drive to New York and we flew from there just so that we could get a direct flight to Athens. So since our other flight was canceled, we wanted to not have to worry about transiting through another European country and worrying about what their entrance requirements were and such. And so we're driving down and I said to Glenn, look, something is going to happen. Not everything is going to go smoothly. That's always the case, but especially right now, we need to prep ourselves. I've had in my mind, this dream trip for 2 years now, right? And that's dangerous. When you are putting so much hope and everything into this trip that you've thought about for so long. And especially, us, we're used to traveling, but, after 2 years of not a lot of travel, it's like it gets even more focus, for you. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, something's going to go wrong. And it just ended up okay, there were a couple little bumps, but thankfully nothing huge happened. And it was just so nice to be in a different place. What I had said, I need a change of scenery. If we can't go to Greece, we're going somewhere that has, I don't know, palm trees or something. I needed a change of scenery. Mm-hmm. And then it was beautiful, but everything is outdoors, and you had to put on a mask when you were in a cab or something like that, but we just didn't worry. And it was really amazing. And I think it was the combination of those couple of things of feeling really normal and being in a new place and just having this, amazing time. And we, it was a splurge trip for us. So I'd booked, some luxury hotels and just being back in that experience. And you think about what we talked about at our last episode about how poor the service is in hotels and stuff right now, because of staffing, to be back in what felt like a very normal travel experience was just amazing.
That's awesome.
It really was so good. And I look at the pictures and I'm like, you can just tell our smiles, we're just happy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I got that sense from just everything that I was watching and following and seeing. It was just seemed like you guys had a really great time. So why don't you start us, for the people who are wondering, why don't you explain what you did before to be able to get to Greece, so they just know what the requirements are maybe, and then walk us through your itinerary if you want, or however you want to present it.
Definitely. So yeah, there's definitely a few things to know about going to Greece right now. I mean, they were one of the first European countries to open up. So what they require is you either need to be vaccinated, fully vaccinated, which includes the 2 weeks, after your second dose, or your one dose if you're a one dose person like I was. And you also need, if you don't have that, then you need to show a negative test, PCR test within the last 72 hours. And you show that when you arrive at the airport, when you're checking in the US. And the other thing that you need to do is complete a passenger locator form. And you need to do that. You can probably would be emailed it from your airline carrier, but otherwise you can find it on the Greek website. You need to fill that out before 24 hours before you leave. So, at least a day before you leave, you fill that out, and it has all your information, your passport information, all that kind of stuff, but also where you're going to be staying, what places you're visiting, all of that.
So it's an online form?
Yeah, it's an online form.
Okay.
You submit it, and then you get a receipt that it's been submitted. And that's what you show when you get to the airport to check in. Then when you arrive in Greece, it's kind of weird because they email you a QR code, but they only email it to you after midnight the day of your arrival. So we were doing an overnight flight. So it's we couldn't show it at the airport when we arrived because we didn't have it yet, but we showed it at the airport. I'm sorry, when we arrived in New York. But when we arrived in Athens, luckily they have free Wi-Fi in the airport. So you just connect and then you get the QR code and you show them as you're coming into the customs area for Athens. Okay. So that's really it. It's pretty simple, really. There are some other things to think about just in terms of, traveling right now. If you're going on a ferry, you need to show your vaccination card or your test. But you also need to complete a health form, one of those, you haven't had these symptoms, that kind of stuff. And they give you a QR code for that. Of course, I can talk later about the whole ferry boarding process. And it's such a madhouse. They don't actually check that, but technically you need to do those kind of things too. So there are, some things. And when we checked into each of our hotels, they checked our vaccination cards. So, you keep that information handy. We had to do one for a boat that we went out on for the day. We had to show the vaccination card and fill out a health form for that as well. So I guess either a vaccination card or a negative test. Yeah. But then within 3 days,
does it have to be within 3 days? So would you have to keep repeatedly testing while you're there if you're not vaccinated?
Because we're vaccinated, I don't know. That's something that you would look into if you have younger children that couldn't be vaccinated or something like that.
Yeah.
Something to ask. And then, of course, to come back to the US, everyone right now needs to have a negative PCR test. So when we arrived, already figured out what we were going to do to make sure that it was possible. Otherwise, I would have bought those Abbott Binax Now tests to bring with us. But we were able to...
Those ones are the rapid, that one, the Abbott one is the PCR that you can...
So they have two different Abbott ones. This is, I guess, good to know. Like there's one that you can buy just in like a CVS or something like that. That does not qualify for overseas travel because it needs to be monitored. But they have another one that you can order online. I think it's $150, but it includes like multiple tests. And what you do is you self-administer it, but you do it like... You get an appointment with a doctor like over Zoom, right? And they watch, that you're doing it so that they can verify, that it's you. So that's a separate one that you have to order online. And that's, definitely an option. But luckily for us, we were able to get to our second island of Naxos. Our hotel helped us arrange an appointment at a clinic there. It could take up to 24 hours before we were getting our results. So we did it on Friday for a Sunday morning departure. And we had our results by Friday evening. And it cost us only €60 per person. If they came to the hotel and did it for us, it was going to be like €120 per person. So that's what we did. But just one thing to note about when you are traveling and you're looking to go to a local clinic for your way back, the hours are very limited. So like the one that we went to was closed on Saturdays. So, you needed to plan that into your time window. But then some of them will be open like for a few hours in the morning or a couple hours in the afternoon, but it's not like all day or, all 24 hours. So you need to definitely plan ahead with that. But overall, like it was pretty easy. I definitely think the most challenging part is, just the long flight. Frankly, like I've never had a mask on for 16 hours before.
Yeah,
and that was
true.
That was a really long time because we had to deal with our long flight. You have your time in the airport, the long flight. On the way there, we then had like a 3-hour layover in the Athens airport and then another flight to Santorini because our itinerary was to have 3 nights in Santorini, 5 nights on Naxos, and then 1 night in Athens for our return. So when we arrived, we wanted to not have to spend time in Athens, but get right to our destination just because we just didn't have a lot of, time. If I had 2 weeks, I would definitely spend more time like in Athens. So we had that flight, and then the cab ride from the airport to our hotel. So, that's a long time, to be in your mask. I definitely switched out my mask like midway.
Yeah, that's good.
This thing kind of stinks after a while,
Yeah. Are they not doing food either? So do you have to kind of make sure you're packing your own food and then are you able to eat it?
They do food. Yeah. So our flight was Delta from JFK to Athens. We did have a bit of a scare that we weren't going to make our flight because we gave ourselves 5 hours to get to New York and it should take 3 hours, but it ended up taking like 5.5.
Oh my goodness.
We parked in like an economy lot that we had pre-booked online. So then we had to take an air train over to the airport and we were so nervous that, we're starting off so relaxed. We're like, we have plenty of time. We're all good. So we were so nervous that we weren't going to make it, but we got there. It was kind of chaos in the JFK airport because it's just super busy. And of course, not everyone had all the information they were supposed to have, and then that takes a little bit of a longer time, but we got to our gate as we were boarding. We got on. Luckily, they were serving food because our plan was to go to a lounge and have a meal and, take some time. We didn't have that. So we were getting onto the plane with a bag of chips and some trail mix for like a 10-hour flight. Luckily, they serve food and basically, they make announcements, of course, when you board, just the same way they would in the U.S. And while you're eating, you can lower your mask. And then it's kind of like after they do their meal service, they're going around being like, mask up, to like making sure if anyone was still lingering, that they're lifting the mask. But I will say, and I've said this before, like with U.S. travel, that if I was not vaccinated, I would not be comfortable going because there are a lot of people that, it's a overnight flight. It's dark. People are kind of lowering their masks as they're sleeping. And on those kind of overnight flights, the flight attendants aren't up and down the aisles as much checking. So I think, you definitely see some, like if they saw someone, they would say something, but they weren't being super proactive with checking often is all I'll say,
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's not the case in the ferries and in the, Athens airport. It seemed like, much more strict. And on the ferry, someone went around regularly, like, talking to people and even having little confrontations with people. So if that's something that's worried, I know I've gotten a lot of messages. I don't want to linger on this too much because there's a lot of really good stuff, to talk about. But, I've gotten a lot of messages from people like asking how comfortable I was. And I have to say, like, when I was in Greece, I felt extremely comfortable. I really, really did. We had masks on in the cabs, but everything else is really outside. Like it's amazing how much everything is outside. I came back and I'm like, oh, right. Restaurants have indoor dining. Like, we don't want to do that, so it's very comfortable in that way.
Great. So you made it to Santorini. That was your first stop. So what sort of things did you do there?
Yeah. So in Santorini is a very crowded, like over tourist island. It's really expensive, but it is, very, very beautiful. And so I knew that we wanted to only spend a few nights there because I didn't have the budget to spend a long time. And I have to say that this year is such a great time to go because it still seemed a little crowded at times. And it was picking up like throughout our stay, seemed to increase. But they were telling me, all the locals were telling me that it was only about 20% of the 2019 numbers. So it's definitely like an over touristed destination. And I had an opportunity to visit when there weren't that many people there, which made it like absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
but we stayed like one of the main towns is called Oia. It's like OIA.
Yeah.
And it is,
that's like
it's
quintessential that everybody sees in the pictures, the white with the blue. Yeah.
Yeah. So I really wanted to stay there. Again, this was our milestone anniversary birthday trip. So it was a splurge, something that we'd saved up for a while. So I had booked us 3 nights at a luxury hotel that called the Canvas Aya Epitome. So this brand, the Canvas Aya, they have, I think 3 or 4 properties that are, well-known luxury properties. Most of them are right in the town. This one is brand new. And it is just about a 10-minute walk outside of town, kind of like down the hill. But we loved the location and I loved the property. It was gorgeous. I had booked us a honeymoon suite with a plunge pool. So big splurge on the suite. We've never spent this much on a hotel. I will admit, definitely like huge privilege here. But we walked in and so it was like you kind of open this one door, you go up some steps, and there's like our patio with our plunge pool, 2 loungers, picnic table, a little bench, and then you go into the room from there. And we walked in and we're just like, wow, like this, it's just so nice to go back to like a luxury hotel and have this like beautiful place and beautiful, setting. And it was so nice. Like, I'm so glad that we had that splurge. They have some other spaces for families, and I saw a number of families, both with teens and with like toddlers, or smaller, like elementary school age. So there are other types of rooms, some larger, some smaller. So that was, my big splurge. And at one point, Glenn was like, how much was this place? And I'm like, I'm not going to tell you. Because this was one where I was like, I want to book this, and surprise you. And so we really, really enjoyed that, like kind of sitting out by our little plunge pool. But then they also have, the property has like a really nice infinity pool and it overlooks the water and you get really beautiful sunset views there, which, in this part of Greece, like some of the places will face a caldera. So you'll get pretty, like the volcanic caldera. Mm-hmm. So you'll get really pretty hues and color, but you don't see the actual sunset. So this sees the sunset, and it's like 10-minute walk up to town where they can shuttle you, and like a 10-minute walk down to Amudi Bay, which is where all the sunset catamarans go out. And it's just like, there's a lot of cool fish restaurants. So I thought the location was fabulous. The service was amazing. The food was great. The breakfast is included. And it's one of those things where you can order as much off the menu as you want, like you order a la carte, and then they're like, oh, do you want fruit? Do you want this? Like the one day that I had breakfast, I like pineapple juice. And so on their menu, they had grapefruit and orange juice. And I was like, oh, do you have pineapple juice? And they're like, we can do that for you. And they came out, they had like blended a fresh pineapple for me.
Oh, man.
And the food was it was fantastic. Like everything was so good. And our first night there, like we were exhausted, right? Because we had this 5-hour drive. Then we had, a 10-hour flight, 3-hour layover, half-hour flight, so we got there and I saw those lounge chairs by our plunge pool. And I'm like, I am taking a nap right there.
Aw, nice.
So we kind of just like napped in the sun for like an hour or two, but somehow like it's just something about the excitement of the first day of your trip where you just like kind of have the adrenaline to like keep going, right?
Yeah.
So that little nap was like all I needed.
Yep.
We showered. I usually plan for something like this for our first day to just have dinner close to the hotel or where we're staying. So I had booked dinner at the hotel, but the hotel has two restaurants. One is like fine dining, one is casual. I had booked us at the fine dining restaurant. And so we ended up having like a degustation menu, like a chef's tasting menu. I think it was 7 courses. And so you would think we would be like way too jet lagged to like appreciate it. But I will tell you, this was one of the best dining experiences of our lives. And we still go back and we're like, is it because we were just so happy to be there? Or, is it just like that first night you have nothing to compare it to? But it was really just wonderful because the service was just so perfect. It wasn't crowded because it was primarily just people at the hotel. So, we were outside, we were overlooking this beautiful infinity pool and the sunset, and our tables were all spaced, and our server was just so sweet. Like every time I was like really enjoying a dish and I would compliment her and compliment the dish, she would get almost like giggly, like she was so pleased like with how much we liked it. And it just like that shows like how much like it means to them to like present and prepare like something that someone's really enjoying, like that kind of hospitality where it's not just like a process, like a routine, it was just like it added a lot of enjoyment, and the food was it was fantastic. It was so, so good. So, another huge splurge for us, but like if you stay there, and I actually had like 3 people, I think like, or more message me on Instagram saying that they had either already booked it or they were booking it for the fall, like that particular hotel, and asking about the restaurant. So I definitely think it's the price. It's a luxury hotel, and the price point is just slightly below the places that are in town. Okay. So it made it fit with my budget, which was already a splurge budget, but yeah. So anyways, that's what we did the first day. And then the next day, again, I didn't want to like overbook us. I really wanted to make sure that this trip was like some exploration, but a lot of time for like relaxation and down and just time to enjoy it and soak it in. I didn't want us to be like, go, go, go. And we also didn't want to be around a lot of other groups or people. So we did things, like more on our own or privately. So the next day we decided to walk into town, and I thought we were just going to maybe like wander around for a little bit, but it was so charming. And so we were just like going down all these side streets, and I'm taking like a million pictures, and we just like loved it. And it was so quiet at first. Like in the beginning, the streets were like empty. We got there probably like 10:30, and streets were so empty. And everyone says like go super early in the morning, but I'm like, my first day, I'm not getting out there like 6 a.m. That's not my idea of a vacation. And then it got like a little busier, like closer to noon. But I think if you're going on a regular year, you probably really have to get there early to avoid the crowds. That's why it's kind of nice to stay right in that area. Because if you're traveling from another part of the island, of course, you're not going to get there, quite that early.
Right.
But it got really hot. Like definitely people asked me about the weather too. It was probably in the high 80s, like maybe low 90s the entire time we were there. I mean, I loved it. Like it was the kind of weather where I could go out every night in a sundress and not have to bring a sweater. It was just like wonderful. Amazing. And it was, the sun was strong, so you would want like a little break from it or to take a swim, but it wasn't, I didn't find it oppressive. Apparently earlier in that week, there was kind of what's been typical of Europe right now is the end of June, early July for the last few years has had like an extremely high heat wave. So they had temperatures well above 100 for a few days. But then, like I said, when we were there, it was kind of more normal summer, but still we like needed a place. We needed a little break, and their lunches are a little bit later there. So like at one point we stopped and Glenn had, I think like a beer and I had a smoothie, and we just sat at a place where we're having this beautiful view, and then we walked around some more, and then we had this amazing lunch. I had like this salad with grilled shrimp, and like everything was like so wonderful. And all I could think was like years ago when I was a picky eater, I was like, oh, I could never go to Greece because I don't like this. Like at the time I didn't like feta. Now I love feta. I still don't like olives, and I didn't eat as much fish, but it is like the food was amazing. All the food that I had was really, really good. And I did not have a problem with that at all. Because at first, a time ago, I was like, I'm going to have to do it on a cruise so that I like the food. But I've expanded my palate. So we had a wonderful lunch. Like there's just so many places that have beautiful views or cute courtyards. And it's just, we had a lovely time. And it reminded me a lot of the Amalfi Coast in Italy and in Capri, except the shops there aren't like the big designer shops. It's more like, there's a lot of touristy kind of, knickknacks and t-shirt kind of things. But then there's, some more local shops. And so I liked that. Sometimes when you go to places and you see all these like really upscale designer shops, I'm like, well, first of all, I can't afford to shop there wherever I see them. And like, if you can get that at a city like near you, like why do you need it like on vacation? I'd rather find like more of the local kind of authentic things. Like we stopped into a gallery and I totally was ready to buy art until I realized we missed a zero on the on the painting price. But yeah, we just had a really lovely time. We went back and we sat by the pool, and then we went back into town that night and we did another tasting menu at this place called Lycabetis. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it, but it's like Lycabettus. And it's named that after a place in Athens that also has a beautiful viewpoint. But it basically is a restaurant like on a cliffside. So you pay more to sit on this like promontory that like sticks out, into the caldera, and you have this great view. Of course, Glenn was like so worried. He's like, am I going to be nervous?
Yeah.
And we had to go down all these steps to like get to it. And he was like slowly going down the steps, and the hostess kept like turning and looking back. And I'm like, we're okay, But I will say like that place was crazy expensive, which we knew it was going to be, because it's definitely very like this is one of the most beautiful places to have a meal or whatever. But I didn't think it was worth it. So I wouldn't say to do it. Like the food was good, but it was much more like it came out very quickly, and it was like everybody near us was getting the same thing at the same time. And it just didn't have that like personal feel to it. And for like a degustation menu, it was a lot of like foam this and, like very, I don't know, kind of, it was inventive, but it also felt very like it's probably been done a lot,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, but it was still, we had a beautiful view. We wandered around town afterwards, and it's just so nice. As we were sitting there, because we probably had like an 8:30 reservation, like, the sun sets, and then so things start to have that beautiful glow, and then the lights start to come on. And then by the time you leave, it's like all lit up, and it's just, like really, really gorgeous. So I really fell in love with like that part of Santorini. But, someone asked me like, how long should you stay in Santorini? And I said, well, I think at least 3 nights, maybe 2 nights if you've already, been in Greece, but really it depends on your budget. Like how long can you afford to stay there? Because the food's expensive. Like everything is definitely pricey. So our last day on Sunday, we ended up, we had booked a half-day wine tour with Santorini wine trails. And we did that. All their tours that they're doing right now are private. So, we basically visited a vineyard, and then because Santorini is probably most well known for their wine, their white wine. It's like the Arsenico grape. And so we went to, I think, 3 wineries and did different tastings. And at each tasting, we had like some local cheese, or one thing I totally fell in love with was the tomato paste, because like Santorini is known for tomatoes too. And you think about tomato paste like that you would buy at the store, like comes in a tube or the little can, and you just like throw it in your lasagna or something like that. Like this was, it was like you just want to spread it on bread. It was amazing. I definitely had a great time on that tour. We learned a lot. It's just the kind of thing that we like to do. Again, this trip was very oriented towards couples, so I apologize for people like looking for family, kids, things to do, because we were very focused on things that we love to do.
No, that still sounds awesome. Sounds like a gorgeous splurge. And I'm sure there's plenty of people listening that don't have kids or are looking for an anniversary trip or, some kind of luxury time. So I think it's good.
Yeah. And then our last night, we walked down to Amudi Bay and we watched all the sunset catamarans go out. And man, those things were packed. Those were crowded. And then we had dinner down there at a Amudi Fish Tavern, it was just a great, it's very touristy feeling, but it's just, it was a great meal, like such fresh fish. The guy was like, no, come over to because I was asking like, what is this type of fish like? And he's like, come look. And I'm like, looking at it is not going to help me know how it tastes, but okay. He kept trying to like, look at this one and we'll cut it this way and we'll do this. But, it's very fresh. So, that was a lot of fun. And I didn't mention, but if you follow on Instagram, you've probably seen, but we did a photography shoot that morning, like before we did the wine tour. So that was a lot of fun too.
Those turned out so well. And I'm happy with the dress you chose. It looked perfect.
Thank you. And thank you, yes, for your advice. I was going back and forth, but I'm like, you know what? I just feel comfortable in this one. And I think like, Glenn has a pink shirt. It'll all kind of, go together. And we worked with Nicola, I think was his name. And he did a fantastic job. He got us into
amazing.
Yeah. And he did so many different like locations. We were like banging out really fast, which is good. Cause like, I didn't think about poor Glenn because it was a lot of like,
edges.
Yes, exactly.
I did.
At one point he was just like, I need a break. I'm sitting this one out, take some pictures of her on her own. But we had fun. It was really nice. So it's just something that it's just such a good memory. Like I know I will look back at those photos and like always smile. I would just always, they'll bring back such happiness. And it's nice to have photos of the two of us because frankly, like, I don't know, we have some from our wedding, we don't have a lot of that. So
he did a great job also of posing you guys. I mean, they were definitely nice anniversary shots. And I think that was part of it is some of the looks and the poses were great. So it wasn't just being in a beautiful area. I mean, they really were engaging of the two of you and good representative representation of your relationship. So
yeah, no, I agree. It was very nice. And so I'm happy to do that. And tip for anyone that wants to do something like that for a future trip, what I do for Flightographer is every Black Friday, they have a sale and I buy a gift certificate, like gift card for that sale. And then I'll just, use it whenever I book for a trip. So little money saving tip there. If you want.
Nice. That's smart. Is it, so it's like a gift card or whatever, and then you can,
and then just, you have a code or whatever you apply. Yeah. So, and that one I had a credit from, we had booked for Paris in 2020 that we didn't do. And so I wanted to use it. I didn't know how long they were going to keep that credit valid. And I didn't know when our next family trip would be. So I'm like, let's do this. So but so that kind of wraps up Santorini. And then the next day we were taking a ferry over to Naxos, which is one of the largest of the Cyclades Islands. And it's, but it's quieter and it is a lot less expensive. I know that our friend Eric from Travel Babbo has gone there a lot with his family. And, so I decided to do that as our second island. It would have been nice if we had a little more time to maybe squeeze in one other island, but, that one was good. We did 5 nights. I think a lot of people will do like Santorini. Well, maybe they'll do Mykonos, but Mykonos is very much like a young party island. I'm like, I'm too old for that. And it's super expensive. Or they'll do Crete, but Crete is huge. And so you could do like your whole vacation just on Crete. Yeah. So this felt like a good mix for us to have like one more of the famous ones and one of the slightly less visited ones. So we took the ferry, and I'll just like a few words about taking the ferries in Greece, just because it was new to me and now I know. And if I'd known what to expect, I may not have been so stressed out. But we got to the ferry port early, but it's just open. There's no like docks that have names of where to go. So we went into like the CJet office, which was the ferry that I had booked. We had filled out our forms and also done our mobile boarding passes. We had all that like on our phones, but we weren't quite sure where to go when we got there. So we went to the office. They're like, just go to like this building, like Terminal 4. So we go in there and we're sitting there and I hear different people talking around me and they're like, we're going to Mykonos, we're going to Athens. So I'm like, okay. So there's multiple boats. So we have to like really listen for like when our boat is coming, right? And the time is getting closer and closer and closer. And the place is really filling up and everyone's talking and it's just like loud and you can't hear a thing. And then I hear some guy like all the way at the end of the hall, like coming in and shouting like, anyone going to wah, 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 and you're like, what was that? So there's like nothing on the loudspeaker to like know which boat are they announcing? Should I go out? Do I not go out? Like, what's going on? Then finally I hear them say like Paros, and I hear them say Athens and Mykonos. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's not us. That's not us. And then finally it seems like everyone is just walking and going. So I'm like, we should just go. Like, I don't know what's going on. So as we get out there, the boat is coming in, and I realize it's a huge boat. This boat is going to all those islands. It's not like there's one boat to Mykonos, one boat to Paris, one boat to Athens. So I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now. But so you're in this giant like herd, and then they are running a few minutes late, which they often are. And so like the boat is not even like docked yet. And, the gangplank is down. People are ready to walk off, and they're like herding us. They're like, go, go, go. And I'm like, oh my God, what's going on here? And I'm like, I have my, we have our luggage, of course. I have my phone out to show like the boarding pass. And I think I'm going to have to show like my health form and my boarding pass and like all this stuff. And the people are like streaming off the boat. We're like streaming on at the same time, and the people are in the back almost with like cattle prods, like go, go, go. And then I hear the captain going like, we gotta go, we gotta leave, we gotta leave. And I'm like, oh my God, like what are they gonna do? Like leave people on the dock? So like we're barely on the boat, and the thing is coming up, and they're pulling away, and it's just like you're in the hold of the boat with like the cars, and there's like these racks where you can put your luggage, and some of them are labeled with certain islands, but people are just throwing their luggage up on racks, and like it's running out of space. So Glenn's like putting it up on the top thing. And then there's this huge like line to get up the stairs, but it's like very bouncy at this point. So you're like trying to keep your balance. But there's like a catch point, because that's where you then have to show like your boarding pass. They never check the health forms, and then we get up there, and then finally they're like, okay, these are your seats. And we sit down, and we're like, oh, okay. Like that was very stressful.
How long of a ride was it?
I think it was like about an hour and a half to go from Santorini to Naxos.
What do they do with the people who don't have their boarding pass?
I know, exactly. And they stopped
throw them overseas.
Like they stopped at another island, like Ios, I think first, and so I don't know. Do they like, I have no idea.
What if you kind of don't want to put your bag in first either. Cause like, how do you get your bag out then with these racks if everyone's been throwing their bags on top of yours? Because I can't believe that they wait there for a while to let you get your bag. They're probably like, sorry, we're leaving.
No,
you got to go to the next.
Definitely not. So then like we're sitting there, and you hear, and it's, how things are, at least they had a loudspeaker on the ferry boat, and the ferry is very much like,
do you actually hear it though?
It's probably like what you're used to with your ferries, where, you have assigned seating. It's more like airplane seating, like, like you have seats.
We don't out here in Seattle, it's open seating.
Open seating. Okay.
Yeah.
So we had assigned seating, and it was like, there's a concession bar. So it's more like, it's a big, it's a big boat. There's multiple tiers. So there is a loudspeaker. There's like TVs playing, but they're, in Greek. I don't know what's going on them. And they're making the announcement first in Greek, but then in English. But I telling you cannot understand it. It's just total Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
And so we're just like, what was that? What was that? And like, luckily we had seen, as the boat was coming in, there was like one of those LED things where it was like Ios, Naxos, Paros, and it gave like the order that they were going in. So I'm like, we're going to be the second one. Just remember, we're the second one. But they're like, oh my please report to whatever. So basically, like before you get to your island, they're calling you to go down to the hold. And
that's where you grab your luggage.
Yeah, so then we grab our bag. But even then, like it got stuck on like, there was like a net up there, and then like the wheel was stuck, and we're like, gotta get it out, and then we're, standing there. And again, like it's like the thing is barely coming down.
Stop,
like,
drop, and roll.
Yeah, they're like, go, go, go. And then the cars are coming off, and they're like, get out of the way. And I'm like, oh my God, like, what am I supposed to do? So it's crazy. But one thing I will say is, when you arrive at an island by ferry or by plane, it's really helpful if you have your transportation already arranged, because there are not a ton of taxis on these islands. So we saw people like waiting a really long time for a taxi. So I had used, I read about it online somewhere, but it's called Welcome Pickups. It's like a little bit like an Uber, but you arrange it ahead of time. And it worked seamlessly. They weren't on Naxos, but it worked in Athens, and it worked in Santorini, where we walked out of the plane in Santorini, and there's a guy holding a sign, Gruber, and we get right in and go. And that's how it was when we arrived in Naxos, although I didn't use that service. It was like through the hotel, but it was just so nice to be like, oh, here's our guy. We don't have to now wait in like this super long line to try to find a taxi. And, so that was really great. I would definitely recommend using the welcome pickups because the hotel in Santorini was going to arrange something. I think they were going to charge us maybe like €75. And then I booked through this and it was like less than €50. So I'm sure it's even cheaper if you got a taxi, but at least you didn't have to wait.
Yeah.
So that was
huge on your vacation. Sometimes it's like, if you're already spending that much money, it's like, do you really need to save $25 or whatever,
Totally. Then that's how a lot of, like, when we were in Naxos, the main town is called Naxos Town or Chora. I guess, like, what I've learned is that on the islands, there's one town and all the others are villages, so you have to like get to a certain size. And then the main town is called like Chora, something like that. But it's also just called Naxos. So we were about 15 minutes south of there, like on a beach called Agios Procopius. I always like switch the K and the P. And so you could take a bus, like back and forth, but we were like, yeah, no, we'll just take a cab. It is a little bit more. So I can see why people would like to stay like right in town, but I really loved our location. So we stayed at a place called the Vertu Suites. It's like VIRTU Suites. Again, a small hotel. Maybe they have a dozen, rooms or so. They have different ones. We didn't go with the top of the line there. I just booked like a sea view suite. So it was just like, basically you walked out of our room and the pool was right there. But I loved this hotel. Again, it was really new. Like they opened, I think, late 2019. So then they were closed most of last year. And so they are back and they were like, please leave us a review. Like we need, we need to get the word out. I'm like, don't you worry. I'm going to like let them know. So I loved it. Like everything was all these natural materials. It was like rope and wood and, it was just like a very, very nice style, very comfortable style. The service was wonderful. I don't even know if all the rooms were filled. Definitely not when we got there because we got there on a Monday. I felt like at first we might have been like one of the only ones in the place. The room was pretty large. It was just so nice. Like we walked out of our room, 2 steps, there's the pool. 10 steps, we're at the restaurant, which is like open air restaurant bar facing the street. And then you go across the street and there's the beach. And the beach is gorgeous. And they have loungers with umbrellas. And all you have to do as a hotel guest is just have them reserve it. They give you a form the night before and they reserve you loungers, down in the front. And then if those don't fill up, then like people can come and pay to stay at the other ones, and they can bring you drinks and food and stuff. And the beach was beautiful. The water was like fairly calm, whereas up by town, like there were a lot more waves. It was rougher. Like that's where people like surf and windsurf. So I thought it was great even for families, it was funny because someone had said like, because the beaches in Santorini are like rock. So they're like, oh no, Naxos has really good beaches there. It's like silk. And I'm like, okay, they haven't seen, some beaches because that was not silk,
like Florida.
But it was, it was not rock. It was more like, what I'd have here in the Northeast, like, that coarse sand. And then, maybe some rock, like as you are getting into the water and then it kind of drops off fairly quickly. And then it's super, super soft. Like there was no seaweed, no shells. Like it was just really beautiful. You could go out, and just kind of float or swim. I had a pretty good current. Glenn tried to swim a bit and it was tough, but you can just float and just like, enjoy and relax. And the water was clear and, a couple of fish swimming around. It was really, really beautiful. Like I was like, wait, am I in the Caribbean? Like this water was so turquoise. It was really nice, beautiful and quiet. Like there were families, they would, play like beach games and, kids around, but it did not feel super crowded at all. Like, especially if you were out there in the morning. I think I posted some pictures and you can see there was like no one in the water. It was beautiful. Really, really beautiful. So I loved where we stayed. The town right where we were staying was smaller. So it was basically like a couple of beach shops with like beach bags and bathing suits and stuff like that. Maybe one boutique shop where I actually bought something and a few restaurants, there were a few like attached to hotels. There were a few like right on that beachfront road, and then a couple of others, but like very, authentic and good food. Like we had our 2 dinners that we did there were €40 total. And we had an appetizer, 2 like giant entrees that we couldn't finish. I think the one place they brought us a free dessert, 2 drinks. Like I was like €40, versus Santorini. So it was really very affordable there. Even the hotel restaurant, which was really good, was not overpriced, and you think a hotel restaurant is always going to be a bit more. So we loved it there. I would definitely recommend looking at staying there. Like I said, it was very comfortable, great service. And, the distance from town was a little bit of a challenge. Like we did, take a taxi back and forth a few times, but it depends like if you're planning on renting a car or if you're going to, just spend time on the beach. Like you don't necessarily need to be going back and forth every day. But yeah, so I really enjoyed it. And then
Sounds nice.
Yeah, our first full day there, I had arranged for us to charter a private sailing on a sailboat. It was something that we had done when we were in Italy one time, and it was like one of my best travel days ever. So I'm like, I really want to do this. And we just didn't want to do I felt like we're in the islands. Like, how do you not get out on the water and see it from the water? And like, that felt like part of the experience, but I didn't want to do like a big group thing. Like, it just wasn't comfortable with that. So yeah, so I had booked it through Naxos Sailing, and the Captain George was like, he was such a character, so funny, so I don't know, like sarcastic, like just he was great. But he also like, he really took care of us, and he had like another guy that was kind of like apprenticing for him, helping out too. But we went out for the whole day, and we went first so basically, like from Naxos, you can see the island of Paros. So we went over to Paros, and then there's some a smaller island off of Paros called like Antiparos. And so there was an area there where we were snorkeling, where it was like definitely popular. You could see like a number of boats coming out to do snorkeling there. There were a couple like yachts sitting there. It was a little bit rough. It reminded me a little bit, Kim, of when you and I were in Key Largo and we went snorkeling.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So not as seasick, but like, remember when we got in there and we're like really bobbing around, and like the water's
bobbing around like
you
crazy
in the face, and
yep.
Yeah, so
yeah, you'd come up.
We went in,
like,
yeah, like exactly. Like I went in, and I'm just not comfortable in the water. I've never liked the water. I don't enjoy swimming. I don't like going under the water. Snorkeling is fine because I can stay on top. But then when you're like bobbing around, and then like a wave is coming, and like water went down my snorkel, so then I'm like coughing, and they're like, just blow it out, and I'm like, no, I'm done. I'm out of here. So like Glenn, he did a little bit more. And I just like hung out in the boat, but the water was beautiful. It was great. Then we went over on Paros. There's like a sea cave that you can snorkel into, but the top of the cave has a big hole in it. So you have like this stream of light, like coming into this cave. So it's like a really neat experience. So we pulled up to there, but because it's like a fairly big sailboat, he couldn't get super close. So you'd have to like swim over. And he gives you like a noodle and stuff, because like I'm not a super strong swimmer, but I was like climbing down to get into the water, and I just looked at it and I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm sorry. Like, I'm just not, because I remember when we were in Italy, I swam through this like grotto, and like on the other side I had Hannah, and stupidly we didn't have like life jackets or noodles with us, and we were both getting tired, and I like pulled her up onto some rocks, and some guy had to like help me get her back to the boat. So I'm like, no, I just don't think I can swim that far. Like, I don't think I'm that, I'm comfortable. So Glenn went with like the other guy on the boat, and I just hung out on the boat, and he loved it. He thought it was great, but it just wasn't something like again, I'm just not a very good swimmer. So then we from there went to like a small fishing village on Paros, and we could stay and like hang out and have lunch there and go to a beach there. We're going to be there for like 3 hours. So it gives you time to like explore Paros. That's the reason I booked this particular tour, because I felt like, oh, this gives us a way to like see another island without having to like worry about like the ferry schedules. And all
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we decided to go and take a cab to the main town. And I always mispronounce this one too, but it's like Nusa. I don't know. It's like it's either NAU or NUA, like SSA or something like that. we had to wait a really long time for a cab. So again, like if we had arranged it ahead of time, it would have worked much better, because by the time we finally got there, we only had like a little over an hour and we needed to eat some lunch too. Like I would have had lunch while I was waiting if I had known it was going to take that long. At first they were like, oh, it's going to be 10 minutes and it was going to be half an hour. And then suddenly like an hour later, we're still like waiting for the cab. But that town was gorgeous. It was so charming. I know, again, Eric has posted some pictures from there in the past, but I fell in love with that town. And I'm like, we have to come back and we have to stay on Paris so that like we can explore more of this town. It just felt like there were just so many shops. There were so many, like in the old town, like so many little alleyways and restaurants and like things to explore. It just looks so cute. But we had kind of a quick lunch, quick little walk through, and then we had to take the cab back. And then from there we sailed, back to Naxos, and I just kind of like chilled out, and it was a great day. So again, a really fun thing to do, whether you do it private or they do small groups, and he has a bunch of different tours. He does sunset catamarans. So actually I saw he gives you a DVD with the photos, because he has like an underwater camera, so he takes photos all throughout the trip. Then he gives you a DVD. So the next day when we were in town, we stopped by the boat to get the DVD, and he's like, oh, someone like already reached out to me that said that they heard about it from you and they booked a trip with us. And I'm like, oh that's wow. Amazing. So, because I don't think we paid for everything on this trip. Like nothing was sponsored or comped. So I didn't even know he was even mentioned that to people. So I don't even know I don't think he's very savvy when it comes to Instagram. I don't think he knew that I tagged him, Oh yeah. So he was probably just like, wow, this is great, Yeah. So that was a great day. I'm sorry. I'm just like going on and on.
That was do you have one more day though? No, we have a couple more days because you were 5 days there. Yeah,
I do.
I was thinking 3 days, but 3 days was Santorini, and then okay.
So if you guys want to stick with me, I will tell you a couple other things to do in Naxos, which we just had such a great time with. One of them, the next day, we did a full day tour with Philema. It's like PHILEMA food tours. Mm-hmm. And they do food tours, but it's like they do a lot more too. And so it's run by, her name is Eleni, and she has a driver as well. So she does like half day tours and full day tours, but it's not like your typical walk around a town and do a food tour. This was very much like a full island experience, which is what I wanted. Like we decided not to rent a car and drive around. And so I thought, well, why not do a tour that kind of combines seeing some of the island with some of the other things that we love? So we booked, it was a cheese, food, wine, and island tour. So the first thing we did was we went to someone's home that they're cheesemakers. So it was a couple that, this is what they do. They make cheese in their kitchen. So Naxos is really well known for like a couple of different kinds of cheeses. So cheese is definitely something that you'll hear a lot about in Naxos. And so it was like a hands-on thing. Like first we met them, we saw the goats where they get their milk, like the whole thing. We went into their kitchen. They had this amazing spread of homemade food. So one thing, if you do this tour, do not have breakfast first. We made that mistake because she made all of these like homemade like zucchini things and tomato things and like just feta and like just, no, not feta. It would have been their cheese. So just so much food. And then we helped them make cheese. So they showed us how they make cheese. I helped stir it. I helped knead it, like put it through the thing. Like it was such a fun experience to get to do that, to get to like learn about their cheeses, but then actually like get hands on and do it and just meet this couple. Like, they're kind of living out there with not a lot of people around. They were so excited to have us and host us. And it was just a really, really lovely experience.
And then, awesome. Yeah, I think it's so cool how you do a great job at finding these, kind of unique experiences and figuring out what to book. So you're not just going somewhere and then wandering the town, which can be good too. But I mean, it's nice that you kind of search for these unique things.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely what we love. And so then after that, we went to a little village. There's apparently only 7 people that live in this village full time. But there's a potter there that's like, I don't know, 5th generation potter or something like that. So we had a little demonstration from him of, making some pottery, looked through his shop. He showed us all these different pieces. Of course, we ended up buying some. You didn't have to, but but it was nice. And those are the kind of things too, though, that like I do kind of love to buy, because it's like you're really supporting this person, like you're supporting like that local economy so much. Like it's not just bought in a store. It's like, I'm going to remember the person that made this and the story behind it and all of that. So we did that. And then we went to a town where they're famous for making there's a distillery there for this alcohol that's made from citron leaves. So I thought it was going to taste a little bit like limoncello. Yeah. But it is so strong. And I am not like a spirits or alcohol person. So like we did a, little tour and tasting there. And then I chose the one that was like the mild one, or the less strong. And then she's like, do you want the other one? I'm like, no, that's okay. But in this town, it's called like Chalky, or it's everything also is spelled like so many different ways. And eventually I'll get a blog post up with all of this, and then I can link to that in the show notes. But it is known, it was like a lot of aristocrats like way back in the day. And then now it has a lot of artisans. And so one thing I did buy there was some placemats, because I met this woman that she showed me like her loom where she hand weaves, everything. And so I bought these ones in like traditional Naxos colors for our kitchen. Oh, neat. Yeah. And they were only like 10 euros. So it was good. But that town was just so lovely and cute. And then we went to this other town. I'm not going to pronounce it right either. It's like a Paranathos or something like that. And it is all marble. So like all the streets are like white stone, marble, because Naxos is known for its marble quarries. And so this town has that history. And we had an amazing meal there. And our guide like introduced us to a couple of the very local to that particular village dishes. And it's interesting because like we learned, it's kind of like most countries when you travel around, like one region is known for this kind of food, that kind of food. And so here you have like a microcosm of that, because it's like this one island has like different villages that are known for different things. And then when we're looking at a menu in Naxos town, we're like, oh, that's that dish that comes from this village, So it was like, it was just so nice, I think, to have that experience with the full day, like with a local guide. And she just told us so much, about like local culture, and just, it was just really great to kind of have that experience. And I will also say, like, so it can be kind of mountainous, and we traveled around, around the island. And so you're going on a lot of like curvy kind of roads. Traditionally, I would get very car sick. So I was worried about that. And because even just going from our place to the ferry in Santorini, I got like super car sick feeling. So then on the whole way on the ferry, I was feeling like motion sickness, because I already started that way. She uses a driver. She has this nice van, and she uses a driver that used to drive like big buses. And she knew that Glenn was scared of heights, and she knows that I get motion sick. And so she asked him to like drive accordingly. And so he took like all those switchbacks and things like nice and slow. And it made such a huge difference on like because my brain wasn't constantly being like, bounced around in a way. Exactly. Yeah. So it made it so much better. It was really like, I was kind of amazed, because I thought, oh boy, what am I going to do? Like I have to take Dramamine, and then I'm going to be, knocked out. But we had then some time to kind of wander around this village, and then we kept driving. We did a couple of like little photo stops at different points, like viewpoints and things. And then we finished at a vineyard. So it's really funny, because like Naxos has this history that goes back like literally millennia, of these vines that have been around for so long, but there's no actual wineries on Naxos. So they tend to like take all of their grapes and combine it, and then almost like let it ferment a little too long. And so the wine they serve is like their house wine, like in their home. Like people tend to use like their own little vineyards just for wine that they make for themselves and for friends. And then like restaurants have like their little house wine, and it's really strong. It tastes like almost like an alcohol, like almost
because it's like maybe like a port or something like a,
it's
a more,
but not sweet,
it's definitely a high percentage alcohol and stuff. So it's not the kind of wine that I would usually drink. But this one vineyard, he's trying to use like all these local grapes, but actually make like a refined, nice wines from it. So we were able to do but he takes all of his grapes like in a refrigerator truck over to Santorini and uses one of their like wineries to make the wine. But we did a vineyard tour and then a tasting with him, and it was just so great. Like, what a great way to end the day, right? Like, we had this really fun, wonderful day, and then we're ending, in the vineyard. We're having wine. We're just getting into like the great conversations. And he owns a wine bar in town that we ended up like going to the next day. And he really focuses on these like small Greek wines. And so it's just like one of these experiences where you just, you're learning a lot. We built on what we learned about Greek wine when we were in Santorini. It was really nice. And then at the end of then we come back and we're like ready for a nap. But it was such a great day. So I would really, really recommend, if you go to Naxos, like try to book her. But it is, it's her. She's not like having multiple guides. And so I know our friend Kirsten had mentioned that when she went to Naxos, she had tried to book with them, but they were already full. So it's something definitely to plan ahead if you are interested in doing that. Mm-hmm. But I'm happy for them, like that tourism is coming back. She had kind of said like, last year was a bust. Obviously this year she thought things were going to be bad, but then like over the last like couple of weeks, things had really picked up a lot. So, it's good to see that they're making it, but she's, everyone was also like very thankful for us, like that we're there, that we booked them, so it was really good. And then honestly, the next couple of days, we hung out at the beach. We walked around town. We went to, get our COVID tests, and then we, explored town a bit. And I will say, like, Naxos town is not as charming as the main town on Paros, but it is fun to explore, but it's very easy to get lost in like this labyrinth of the old town kind of streets. And Glenn was like, wait, we saw this before. It's like one of those kind of things where like, how do we find our way out? We felt like little, like mice, finding our way out. But it was nice. We had another wonderful meal for our last meal. And one night we did walk out to one of the things that Naxos is known for is they have, you see it right when you come into a port, it's like it looks like a big doorway. It's Apollo temple or Portara. So it's very well known that people go there. You can go there for sunrise, you can go there for sunset. It's really, really busy at sunset. But after a full day at the beach, I was actually having like major issues with my eyes because I have such sensitive eyes. And even though I had like sunglasses and a hat on, like just all the sun exposure and the wind and everything, like my eyes were terrible. Like I had to like lie down for like an hour with my eyes closed. I used like half a bottle of drops. Like it was just so much like pain in my eyes that I'm like, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to go out tonight. So we ended up going out. Glenn I'm like, you have to like kind of like lead me by hand. And then by the time we went to that wine bar, and by the time we like finished there, I was feeling like a little bit better. So we decided like last minute to walk over and see sunset there. So it's not like there are people that get there early and set up with a great location and all that. We kind of like just walked up, and I'm like holding my phone or camera like above people's heads to kind of take a picture. But it was beautiful. And like, it was crowded, but it was outside. And honestly, like the wind was going so strong. I'm like, well, it's just blowing everything right past me. Like I'm not going to worry about it being crowded or anything. And it, even like that kind of crowd, it was manageable. Like there's places to walk around and walk away. It wasn't like a crazy, like packed in kind of crowd. And then we had dinner. So yeah, we had a wonderful stay. And then the last day we didn't have to go to our ferry. Our ferry was at like 1:30, and our hotel agreed to let us do a late checkout. So we went to the beach in the morning, we hung out, came back, we took a shower. Then we get to the port, like an hour early, because they told us, oh, you don't have to like get there like 15 minutes early. I'm like, oh, that makes me nervous, So we got there, I think maybe like 45 minutes early. And as we're going, the taxi driver, they have this really cool app where they're able to look up like where the different ships are. And they're like, oh, your ship is running about like 45 minutes late, because it had been getting windier all throughout the week. So the Greek islands are known for this, the Meltemi winds. And so that pushes back, like the ferries can't go as fast, things like that. Yeah. So it definitely affects things. And that's why we had to switch our sailing day to like the very first day that we arrived, because that was going to be the best day, from a wind perspective. Like we didn't want to be out there when it's super choppy. So we get to the port and we're like, okay, well, we're already here. So we just like went and we had a quick lunch. Then we get over to the, to line up for our ferry. And we're like the last ones in line. At least like this one was marked. So it was a little bit, and we knew what to expect. So we're like, okay, we're just going to stand in this line. But we're out there in the sun, and we ended up standing there for an hour and a half because our ferry was so late. But we didn't have that app to be able to look up and be like, when is it coming? And ferries come and go so much. So you see one on the horizon, you're like, is that us? We're like, no, it's not us. That's going somewhere else, So by the time we finally got to Athens, it was late. And my plan was to try to go to the Acropolis and see the Pantheon, like just not with a tour, but just like quickly be like, hey, I saw it. But it was going to be closed by the time we got there. But luckily, we stayed at a hotel called the Hotel Grand Bretagne. I don't know. I'll put it in the show notes.
I can't help you, so I don't know.
It is a Marriott property, though.
Oh, nice.
So it's a luxury property. It's part of the luxury collection, so we used points to book it. So we're very happy about that. We had a little balcony where we could overlook the Parliament building. We saw the changing of the guard that happens there. And then their rooftop, which is where they do their breakfast that's included. You can see the Acropolis Hill and the Pantheon and things from the rooftop. And so I had booked us dinner there, at the rooftop hotel, just figured that would be a nice view, like sunset view. And also we did that. And it was, it was great view. But then I decided like afterwards, like, hey, let's take a little walk through the Plaka neighborhood, which is like this bustling, like, restaurants, bars, kind of area. So we went and we did a little like walk around that and then came back, around midnight. And the next day we flew home. And that was such a long flight because it's like 10 hours and 45 minutes, I think, on the way home. And it's actually the longest flight I've ever been on. And then we, got to New York and we had a quick dinner at this place that we love near JFK, but then we had to drive home.
Yeah.
And, so by the time we got home, it was what was for us 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So we'd been up, like almost 24 hours. And I was like, I was okay, but I just couldn't sit still. Like, I'm glad Glenn was driving home and I'm like twisting and turning in my seat. I'm like, I just can't sit any longer. Like it was a long travel day, but I think it was kind of good that we got home at like 10:30 at night or so, because then, we're able to like
go to bed and
then kind of get up and be on like a regular schedule.
Yeah.
So the jet lag on the way back wasn't too bad. And actually I found myself for like the first time in my life being tired at like 10 p.m. So
nice.
Yeah, that only lasted a week. Now I'm back to my normal, but yeah. So it was a great trip.
That sounds like you guys had such a good time. And like I said, had some really unique experiences that kind of let you get a real feel for Greece and what those islands are known for. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
You can definitely see how people keep going back and back and back to other islands and stuff.
Oh, for sure.
It seems like there's so much.
So many islands. And even like on Naxos, there were some like Greek temples or ruins or things that I would have liked to go see. But if we had one more day, like I would have either rented a car or gotten a guide to do that kind of stuff. But like I said, we didn't want to be going. So I know a lot of people will write like things to do. And I'm like, well, I can't really write the things to do, but I feel like what we did was a really nice balance of things.
I think that's important. We'll talk about my recent trip, and I purposely booked it to not be go, because Paul does not enjoy those kind of vacations. And it starts to get, when we're doing a job as a blogger and we have to get the things to do. And, we've been on press trips that you go, you're here for an hour, and then you go somewhere else for an hour, and you visit like 4 things during the day, and you can't really get a solid feel for anything, but you've got a long list of things to do. So yeah, it's interesting, like vacationing versus just getting information is different.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I guess if everyone stays tuned, then next time we will get to talk about your trip.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that you will be putting out articles, so people can always go check We3 Travel and, of course, the vacationmavens.com show notes for Tamara's information all about her trip and some of those unique experiences I'm sure she'll be sharing about.
And all those things that I couldn't pronounce. All right. Talk to you next time.